What's up, guys? This is Chris from DraftDashboard.com.
Here are my DFS picks for MLB Playoffs Friday, October 2nd.
These picks apply for DraftKings and FanDuel. Before I get started, please drop a like on this video and hit that red subscribe button
And hit that bell icon
so you don't miss our new videos.
In this video, I'm going to go over my top picks for today's MLB slate. And if you stick around to the very end of this video, we'll use the Draft Dashboard tools to make a DFS lineup using the picks we just made. Okay guys, MLB Playoffs. Let's take a look at this 2-game main slate. At the pitcher position, so if you have the extra salary, I think Yu Darvish is the best pitcher on the slate, but you got to pay up for him. He's $11,000 FanDuel salary and $2,000 less on DraftKings. But he's in a good spot here tonight. The Miami Marlins are only batting a .250 batting average. They've only hit 13 of his last 52 pitches. His ERA is 2.01. He has a record of 8-3, pitching an average of 96 pitches per game, averaging 45 fantasy points per game, and he scored 46, 33, and 37 fantasy points in the last 3 games. So he's got a nice matchup here tonight, but he's expensive. So if you have the salary, I like Yu Darvish here versus the Miami Marlins. But the guy I'm looking at here tonight, because of the salary saving, is Sixto Sanchez with a 5% pitching advantage over the Chicago Cubs. Sixto Sanchez is only giving up a .477 OPS versus lefties, and he's facing 4 lefties here tonight. Now there's no pitches versus the Cubs yet, but he's only $7,600 FanDuel salary and $200 more on DraftKings. So you're getting a quality pitcher, saving a ton of money for the other positions. He has an ERA of 3.462. His record is 3-2 on the season, pitching 80 pitches per game, averaging 29 fantasy points per game. Now the scary thing is here, he's only scored 3, and 40 fantasy points in the last 3 games. So you can see he's had 2 bad games in a row there, but he's got that big 40 fantasy point upside. So I like Sixto Sanchez here versus the Chicago Cubs. Okay, let's take a look at the first base position. I like Mitch Moreland with a 47% batting advantage over Jack Flaherty. Mitch Moreland is batting 29% better versus righty pitchers. He's batting a .913 OPS versus righties. And Jack Flaherty throws his worst ball versus lefty batters. 18% worse than his pitch to righties, giving up a .696 OPS versus lefties. There's no at-bats versus Flaherty yet, but Moreland is only $2,800 FanDuel salary and $1,500 more on DraftKings. He's averaging 11 fantasy points per game on the season, and he scored 6, 16, and 25 fantasy points in the last 3 games, projected at 10.4 fantasy points here tonight. So I like Mitch Moreland here versus Jack Flaherty. Okay, who do we have at the second base position? I like Jake Cronenworth with a 61% batting advantage over that same pitcher, Jack Flaherty. Jake Cronenworth, he's batting 43% better versus righty pitchers. He's batting a .963 OPS versus righties. And we know Flaherty throws his worst ball versus lefty batters, giving up a .696 OPS versus lefties. There's no at-bats versus Flaherty yet, but he's $3,000 FanDuel salary and $1,600 more on DraftKings. He's averaging 9 fantasy points per game on the season, and he scored 16, 18, and 3 fantasy points in the last 3 games. So I like the splits here. So I like Jake Cronenworth
here versus Jack Flaherty. Okay, let's take a look at the third base position. I like Tommy Edmund with a 20% batting advantage over a low salary pitcher, Adrian Morejon. Tommy Edmund is batting 20% better versus lefty pitchers. He's batting a .909 OPS versus lefties. And Adrian Morejon, well, we don't have his stats here versus switch hitters yet, but normally pitchers don't pitch well versus switch hitters. I'm not sure why we don't have the OPS versus switch hitters here. I'm going to try to get that updated. But Tommy Edmund is 0 for 1, so small sample size here, and he's 3,100 FanDuel salary and 1,000 more on DraftKings. Edmund is averaging 9 fantasy points per game on the season. He scored 6, 6, and 0 fantasy points in the last 3 games, projected at 9.9 fantasy points here tonight. But I like Tommy Edmund here versus Adrian Morejon.
Real quick, guys, I got great news. For a limited time, we're offering a full 30-day trial to Draft Dashboard. The tools are all about saving research time. You can see the last 3 games, the fantasy points per game, the targets they got per game, so you can see how involved they are in the offense, the rushes they got per game. Seeing all this stuff on one screen helps you save time and make better picks. Oh, and if you're tired of doing research every day, we just added a cheat sheet that shows hand-picked plays for the slate. No confusing stat lines, no headaches, just a simple cheat sheet that shows the absolute best players for your lineups.
Okay, let's take a look at the shortstop position. I'm going to pay up here at the shortstop position. I like Fernando Tatis Jr. Although he doesn't have a pitching advantage here, he is going up against that same pitcher we've been targeting. I like stacking these batters versus Jack Flaherty here tonight. Fernando Tatis Jr., he's still batting a .940 OPS versus righties. And Jack Flaherty, he's giving up a .569 OPS versus righties. Tatis Jr. is 1 for 2 with a 1 OPS versus Flaherty. He's 4,300 FanDuel salary and 1,300 more on DraftKings. He's averaging 15 fantasy points per game on the season. He scored 51, 12, and 3 fantasy points in the last 3 games. He's projected at 16 fantasy points here tonight. So I like Fernando Tatis Jr. here versus Jack Flaherty. Okay, moving on to the outfield position. I got a few outfielder plays for you here. So I like Ian Happ with a 39% batting advantage over Sixto Sanchez. Ian Happ is batting 20% better versus righty pitchers. He's batting a .921 OPS versus righties. And Sixto Sanchez throws his worst ball versus switch hitters, 20% worse than his other pitches, giving up a .760 OPS versus switch hitters. There's no at-bats versus Sanchez yet, and Happ is 3,400 FanDuel salary and 800 more on DraftKings. He's averaging 10 fantasy points per game on the season, scored 22, 9, and 6 fantasy points in the last 3 games, projected at 10.1 fantasy points here tonight. So I like Ian Happ here versus Sixto Sanchez. And then I like Trent Grisham. So if you want to complete your stack here, he's going up against Jack Flaherty, and he's got a 25% batting advantage here. Trent Grisham bats 7% better versus righty pitchers. He's batting a .785 OPS versus righties. And we know Jack Flaherty throws his worst ball versus lefty batters, giving up a .696 OPS versus lefties. Now I like this pick because Trent Grisham is 4 for 6 with a 1.5 OPS versus Flaherty. He's 3,300 FanDuel salary and 1,200 more on DraftKings. He's averaging 12 fantasy points per game on the season. He's only scored 3, 6, and 0 fantasy points in the last 3 games, so he's due for a big night here, projected at 14.6 fantasy points here tonight. So I like Trent Grisham here versus Jack Flaherty. Okay, if you're looking for a value play here and you're not going to play Yu Darvish, take a look at Corey Dickerson with a 36% batting advantage over Yu Darvish. Corey Dickerson bats 15% better versus righty pitchers. He's batting a .839 OPS versus righties. And Yu Darvish throws his worst ball versus lefty batters, 21% worse than his other pitches, giving up a .721 OPS versus lefties. Corey Dickerson is 5 for 13. That's a .385 batting average and a 1.154 OPS versus Darvish. He has 2 singles, 2 doubles, and a home run. And he's only $2,800 FanDuel salary and $700 more on DraftKings. He's averaging 8 fantasy points per game on the season, and he scored 29, 7, and 3 fantasy points in the last 3 games, projected at 10.4 fantasy points here tonight. So if you're not playing Yu Darvish, even if you are, sometimes in these small slates, you got to stack someone against your pitcher. This is a nice value play. He's got nice batter versus pitcher stats. So I like Corey Dickerson here versus Yu Darvish.
If you want to try all these daily fantasy tools for yourself, click the link in the description below this video or just go to draftdashboard.com. You can use our DFS lineup optimizer to build quality lineups using our picks and your own custom player pool. Click the link in the description below this video and try all these daily fantasy tools right now. Thanks so much for watching. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit that bell icon so you can get instant updates whenever we post a new video.
Thank you so much for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Oh, and please comment below with your favorite player for this MLB slate. I love to hear what you guys have to think. Thanks again, and good luck.